Hi everybody, and welcome to the AuthorAID Research Writing online discussion. So I'm here with a group of the facilitators on the online course, and we're going to address some of the issues and some of the questions that have been raised in the forum in the first 3 weeks of the course. So first of all, we'll introduce ourselves. My name is Andy Nobes. I am the course administrator, and I am based in Oxford, and I work for AuthorAID at INASP. And we'll just get the other participants to introduce themselves, starting with Ravi.
Hi everyone, my name is Ravi Murugesan. I am the course facilitator, and I'm based in Pondicherry, India.
And Mehraz?
Yes, I'm Mehraz Boolaky. I'm from Mauritius, that small island. I basically work for the University of Liverpool, Laureate Online, and the University of Roehampton. I'm pleased to be a guest facilitator for this course.
Okay, and Eucharia?
Hi everyone, I'm Eucharia Nwaichi. I'm currently a visiting faculty at University of Nottingham. So I'm happy to be a guest facilitator here with a lot of students. Very, very warm in the house.
Great. And Blami?
Good morning, everyone. I am Blami Dao, originally from Burkina Faso, currently working at an international NGO based in Baltimore in the US, which is affiliated to Johns Hopkins University. Really happy to be part of the facilitation team.
Great. And finally, Alex.
Hi, I'm Alejandra Arreola. I am in Monterrey, Mexico. I'm a science writer, and I teach science writing at the Universidad Autónoma de Nuevo León, and I'm a guest facilitator in this course.
Great. Right then, so we thought we'd just discuss some of the most commonly asked and most interesting questions that we've seen on the discussion forums of the online course. So first of all, question is, can I publish an article that's based on a conference paper that I have already presented? So, so who would like to?
Okay, I'll start. Can I?
You sure? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, of course. I mean, this is, you know, I mean, something that I have done in the past. Of course, we do not, you know, we have to adapt the paper and not publish it, you know, as is. So some adaptation is required, and yes, why not, you know, improve on the literature review, update some of the figures, even the literature, in order to publish in a good journal. Yeah. That's my part.
Okay, I think this is something that should be encouraged because what you present at a conference, I can say it is really a short version of a paper. Because most of the time given for a presentation at conferences is around 10 to 15 minutes. You cannot present all the data. You cannot have a lengthy discussion. So definitely for me, you should publish after the conference if it is a good paper. I will encourage researchers to do that. And even there are some conferences who request that if you have a good paper, that you send back to them.
It for us.
Exactly, you send them the full article so they can publish it.
In fact, you know, in Emerald, if I may, Emerald, we did this with one of our first papers. I was in a conference organized by Emerald. There were partners there, and they did ask us to, you know, send the full paper for consideration, and it was published finally.
Okay. Anybody else like to contribute?
I think it depends on the conference. Some papers published at a conference count already as a publication, so you need to check with them. And if there are no restrictions, if that paper does not count as something that's been already published, then you can publish it. Otherwise, you might be looking at a duplicate publication, and you really don't want that.
Yeah, I agree with Alex. Some conference organizers are very structured bodies where they have DOIs, they have very well structured domain for the conference proceedings. So if you develop your paper maybe prior to the conference or after the conference and you find out that these are searchable online and they are well located in the domain, I don't think you need to republish. Especially conference organizers allowing as much as 15 pages, 17 pages for a developed paper. So I don't think you need to republish.
But it seemed to me, other can correct me if I'm wrong, that most of the conferences, in fact, do not publish a full proceeding of a conference with a full paper. What they publish most of the time is the abstract. If that is the case, so I don't see why they will not accept that you publish the full paper in another journal, because most of the time they are just publishing the summary or the abstract of your presentation, unless there is a proceeding book where the full paper is published. In that case, of course, you can no longer publish it in another journal, otherwise it will be a duplication.
If I may add, can I? Yes, honey. Yes, if I may add, I mean, now most, you see, I'm referring to academia here, and particularly, those who are aiming at promotion. Now, conference proceedings and conferences, they normally carry a different weight from a paper that is published in a journal. So, in other words, if we are ambitious about, publication, now the first step is to attend the conference. We know it is easier to publish through the conference, but then we have to add academic rigor to the paper. And of course, yes, sometimes we have to seek permission for rewriting the paper and submit to a good journal. In fact, you see, this is the same, for example, for a dissertation, whereby a student can publish from his or her dissertation, and the university is made aware. So, for the purpose of promotion, I think publishing, your conference paper in a good journal, but of course not the full paper as it is, but with major, some major modifications. I would encourage this.
Okay, well, so I'd just like to sum up the responses. So thank you for the excellent responses. I think we got some really good points, and I agree with all of them. It is a bit of a complicated issue. In a sense, yes, a conference paper can be the base for a journal paper, and in some cases, or it even should be. But at the same time, there is this issue of whether, well, how much of the journal paper can be based on the conference paper. So the conference paper should be a foundation, of course, but there is the issue of plagiarism. It shouldn't be copy. It shouldn't be a lot of copied text, or even at the most very little. And there's also the pressure among many researchers to publish journal papers, because conference papers are seen as not being important enough. So the first thing for a researcher to check is whether the conference proceedings are indexed. So, so first of all, does a conference expect a full paper? And if they do, I think a good conference should make sure that the proceedings with the full papers are indexed somewhere. Otherwise, they really shouldn't get researchers to write up full papers that are only printed. Then researchers become confused about, okay, that's only in print, but what about online? So good conferences do put out proceedings that are indexed, such as the IEEE. I can think of one such example. So in that case, that does count as a publication in its own right. So a conference publication, that is indexed, that is available online, is a publication. So I think researchers shouldn't feel the pressure to put out another journal paper based on that. So that's another thing to keep in mind. So I think it's a nuanced issue, and it should be approached on a case-specific basis. And of course, I think all of our friends here have made excellent points. So yeah, that's what I have to say about it.
Okay, great. So second question is, how can we avoid predatory journals?
Oh, that's contentious.
Would you like to start?
Well, what I tell my students usually is you have to do a very wide search. You can't just rely on a single source. Some people say just go by Bell's list, but that has some issues. Other people say go to DOAJ. That has some issues too. So just do search everywhere. Like look at maybe Wikipedia. It may have some good information and maybe current information. The Bell's list is definitely a good place to start. Look at the website and look at the directory of open access journals. And with all of these, I usually get a really good picture whether the journal is trustworthy or not. But it's not an easy question to answer. I don't know what anybody else has to say.
Yeah, I think if I may add to what you just said, also running away from predatory journals has a lot to do with ourselves as researchers. So we want to run away from doing wishy-washy research, because if you have a wishy-washy research, definitely you like to run to the predatory journals. So before we consider the necessary things we have to do to find which journals are predatory or not, we have to ensure that our research has followed the ethical undertone to be able to qualify to go to journals that are standard by definition of what a good journal should be. And like everybody has said in the discussion thread, that it doesn't really have to be based on impact factor and all of those listed. So new journals can start with a good intent,
for sure,
maybe a gap in the area or whatever thing that made them come up. So when you do a search, like Alex has said, you find a good journal, but then you will be spurred inwardly by your good research to make a search. When you don't have a good research, you cannot be inwardly spurred to make a search for a good journal.
Okay, if I might add something, I think what needs to happen regarding predatory journals is that there should be a global effort to educate researchers about this issue, and particularly researchers who are in developing countries, because on a daily basis, I am receiving requests from predatory journals to publish in their journal because they just went to, they saw I have published in a reputable journal. So they take my emails there, and every day I can't tell you I'm receiving those requests. I am
and along with along with the congratulations, Blami, they will congratulate you.
Exactly.
We have seen, you know.
Yes, I guess if I was in Burkina Faso receiving such requests, I would say, hallelujah. Those, I am now becoming a great scientist. I have requests from all over the world. But because I am not aware of that phenomena, it is because I'm here that I know. So I think AuthorAID can really play a good role in raising awareness regarding predatory journal. Of course, that will not be enough, but for me, that is a good start.
Just to, to add, I think, the best bet is to, that's why we are in the process of publishing a paper right now, which is ready. So I requested my colleague, to look at some of the journals we have cited in our literature review, and then go for it. I think this is, this is a sure way of avoiding any, any of these predatory journals. Elsevier, Sage Open, whichever, the big name, we have no choice.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I want to add something. Excuse me, Andy. Is there a way, for instance, if you want to publish in a journal and you are not sure if it is a predatory one, is it good to send an email to one of the people who is supposed to be on the editorial board? Because what happens sometimes with those journals, they put name of people, they say, okay, Andy Noble is one of our editors. Knowing Andy, I say, okay, if Andy is there, that is good. Maybe even Andy is not aware he is on the editorial board. Is that a possibility? To send an email saying, okay, sir, are you really on the board of this journal, editorial board of this journal?
Well, we work with many journals, and we've been encouraging them to add the contact details of their editorial boards on their home pages, so that people can actually do this. They can contact the...
Yeah, a good way out also, yes.
Pardon? Ravi, do you want to comment?
Yeah, well, it's really always a hot topic in our online courses, predatory journals, and also the field, if we can call it a field of predatory journals, is also rapidly evolving. If you knew something about it last year, well, there's a lot of new information, or there are a lot of new predatory or suspicious journals. Not only that, and also practices and so even that is an evolving. Unfortunately, it's becoming more complicated, and also because of so there is an unfortunate overlap between predatory journals and the open access movement because of the article processing charges, which are often charged by both. That is, authors are asked to pay a fee to get their paper published. So this is common practice among both predatory journals as a journal, and a lot of authors in our experience to be confused, and they seem to think that any journal that charges an article processing charge is a predatory journal. So of course that is not correct. So I think it's just the best way. The previous topic that we discussed, the conference publication, whether a journal developing a journal paper based on a conference publication. Now that is an example of a topic which is somewhat complex, but it's something that you can wrap your head around with some discussion with colleagues and including facilitators within the AuthorAID course. But predatory journals, I think the best way is to really be on top of it, is to really talk to, not be swayed by any sort of email, but at the same time not think that open access journals are bad, or that journals published in a developing country are predatory journals. So it's a nuanced thing, and the best way is to really have a balanced approach and to keep talking with the peers and supervisors that you trust. And to have a balanced view, and it's something that there is a research ethics forum in our online course that you can ask more questions there. Yeah, so it's just something to be on top of going forward. It's not something that you can pack away at some point and think, yeah, I know what a good journal is, and I know how to deal with this issue. It's just something you need to be on top of.
Ravi, can I add something?
Yeah.
I think those predatory journals are even going beyond journals. They are organizing predatory conferences. In what they are doing now, yes, they send you a request, say, okay, we are going to Dubai, organizing a big conference on such topic. You have been selected as one of the keynote speakers. We guarantee you that at the end of the conference, yes, they organize conferences in every field. And they say, okay, at the end of the conference, we are going to publish the proceeding of the conference in our journal which has high impact factor and things like that. So people are now becoming confused because if somebody is investing in organizing entire conference for making money, it's what they are doing now. So they are linking the conferences now to a publication. It's become even more confusing.
Yeah, and I'd just like to add an anecdote over there. A couple of years back, or maybe last year, there was a conference called Entomology 2015 or something like that. So that is a respectable conference, but another scam conference, as Blami mentioned, you know, sort of like the predatory journals. They also organized a conference with a hyphen, Entomology 2015. So even a lot of I think researchers who knew about predatory journals, I think some of them were duped by this conference, which was very similar. There was just a hyphen extra in the fake conference. So sometimes these conferences are actually held, but then it turns out to be just an event where where not much science is discussed, and in some cases they are not even held, and people lose money by paying for it and find out it's been cancelled. So it's just something, whenever in doubt, researchers have to ask. There are many places such as the AuthorAID discussion list and other places like ResearchGate. They have to ask and not be not think that they know what is the right thing to do. I think, yeah, that would be one suggestion I have.
Okay, so Alex at the start mentioned two websites. One of them was Beale's List, another one was the Directory of Open Access Journals, and there's another website which is called Think Check Submit. And Alex, you've got this on a piece of card, haven't you? Yeah, Think Check Submit. So we'll provide all the links that we've talked about when we put the video on the website. But that's another important website to visit, which gives you a checklist of things that you need to look at to identify if the journal is a reputable journal or not. Moving on then to another question. So let's look at the question, so what happens if the research that you need to do your own research, to do your literature review, what happens if it's hidden behind a paywall and you can't access it? Who'd like to start on this one? What can we do?
Well, you can ask somebody who has access to it to get it for you. You can go to your library. Some university libraries have a system where you can get papers. They have these exchange programs, and you can get papers for a reduced price. You can contact the author. Sometimes they send it. In one case, a friend got it autographed from the author. The author happened to be Brian May, so that was a win-win for everyone. So I think that's those are some of the things you can do.
Has anybody else ever emailed the author for a copy?
Yes. Okay.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I've done that a couple of times. And we do, we do get the copy of the paper. But at times, even the authors, they do not have, a copy of the full paper. I remember, in the good journals, you've got to specify the page number. This is what makes the difference, especially in the reference list. And, when you download the paper, somewhere, where it should not be, we don't get those page numbers. And, Sage, for example, Emerald, will not publish the paper unless you have specified, the page numbers. And I learned this the hard way. So each time now I'm writing a paper, I make sure to keep the page number, to make sure that the page numbers are there in the reference, in the source.
I think, as Mehraz has said, if you write to the author, it seems that most of the time people are really keen enough to send you a copy. I have done that a couple of times when I was still in Burkina Faso. But the question I asked myself, as now I'm based in the US, if I ask an author to send me a copy free of charge, he may be reluctant to do so, because he say, okay, somebody from a developed country need to be able to pay for the paper. That, I think that can be an issue.
Yeah. Now this reminds me also, you know, that you see, we are in a dilemma to share the full paper, you know, because the journal keeps the copyright. I've published within the Science. Oh, I'm sorry, I should not be mentioning the name, so please cut down the, you know, this part. Well, I've published with the publisher, and you know, to access my own paper, I have to pay $32. Can you imagine? I didn't get a copy of the, you know, of the original paper. But I guess, you know, if I'd written to them, you know, because it was co-authored, I think the main author got, you know, the full paper. But I didn't need it, you know, because I had, you know, I had a copy for myself. So here we might, you know, we might have a problem of copyright. If, you know, we are infringing, you know, the declaration we made before the paper is published, and of course, you know, they make money and we don't get anything. We will not know. I've seen one of my papers, 772 downloads, you know, I mean, papers, you know, copies of this full paper were issued by the journal. 700 times $32, it makes quite some money. But we didn't get anything as offers, unfortunately.
This is the point for open access.
Yeah, this is where they're turning for open access. And I quite agree, you know, that for open access, we've got to pay a publication charge, so long that the charge, you know, is not phenomenal. This is where we have to be careful, you know. But otherwise, you know, for example, Sage Open, you know, they charge $195. I mean, I think it's reasonable against $3,000, $5,000 that some others, you know, will ask you. I can never publish a paper for pay $5,000. Where do I get this money?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, but I think if your project includes, make some provision for journals and articles, you know, like materials for the project, you can actually buy.
Yes. When we're publishing for a project, you're absolutely right, Daniel.
Yeah, you can.
Then provision is made.
Journals also need to be encouraged to do more work. A lot of them do not have any form of charity or whatever support from government or whichever agency in the countries where they exist. So if we can, if it's in the budget, or if we can afford it as researchers, we can afford to pay. I have paid for some articles, you know, to have access to them. But if you have other options, you can explore. But why not if you can pay?
Yeah, that's a very good point. You should make provisions when you ask for a grant. Just write that money to publish a paper, and this goes to, it touches on another point in the course, that you should think where to submit before you start writing the paper. So that ties up nicely.
So are there any other thoughts on what researchers can do if they can't easily access a paper that they want to read and cite?
Yeah, just a quick comment that yeah, this is something that is covered to some extent in one of the course lessons. I think in one of the first section. So there are a number of suggestions given, and which are all kind of repeated by our guest facilitators here. So yeah, there are many steps I think researchers can take, and yeah, so one of which should hopefully work out. And I think some of we've also touched upon how other issues, which are such as how researchers who publish in subscription journals sometimes don't have access to their own papers, which I think is related to a different topic. Yeah. So yeah, that's what I have to say about this.
So this leads on to another question that we've seen quite often, and this is, can I cite a paper if I haven't read it?
Oh yes, I think you know. I mean, if you have not, well, this is where we use the cited in. If I get the question right, we can use the cite. This is permitted. You've not read the paper, but you've read it from a secondary, from well, a secondary source, and then you refer to the, you refer to what you have read in that paper without having to have that original paper. So, but Harvard that I'm used to will gives a way to reference this, and that should be no problem. But of course, what we have to advise our scholars is not to make an abuse of cited in. You can use 2, 3, a couple, but we should not keep on cited in. I've failed a few dissertations just because of that. That's
okay.
Yeah.
I don't know, but I will be really reluctant to cite a paper that I have not read. Because sometimes when you see, you read a paper, and in that paper there is a citation. When you go to the original paper, sometimes you realize that what was cited is not quite the same of what all the author have said. You realize that. So you say, aha, if I have directly cited this, I will be in trouble because it is not quite similar. It's not the same way that it was in the original paper. So I don't know. But in many instances, when people don't have access to the full paper, they do that because, okay, they need to have references. But we have to be cautious, really, if you want to do that.
I think what Mehraz said depends on the field. In some fields, you can use the cited by. In my field, at least in biology, you just don't do that. So in my field, you need to have the original. And what I would say, if the paper is that important that you need to cite it, then you need to do your best to get the original.
Yeah, I think you need to do your best to get, I'm a biochemist anyway, so you need to do your best to get the original, but sometimes all efforts prove abortive. So at that point, you may have to say it as cited by. But if good reviewers are handling your paper, your manuscript, so they may also try to do a search and try to confirm that maybe beyond reasonable doubt, the paper could not be located, so they accept it. But if it's readily available, they may turn it down. Either is a lazy researcher or some form of, yeah. So it's important that we make a thorough search for the paper. If I must search, why not? You need to get to it. Sometimes you get more information. Some journals, I have looked for them from some other article. Maybe they presented the results in percentages, and I need them in maybe milligram per kg or something. If I have the real data, I may be able to convert it to my unit and cite them to get the source where I got the raw figures. I converted to my comfort unit. So, but if I just lifted it from the work where it was cited, then I may lose out a lot of details as how it has a lot of meaning to what I want to communicate to my audience.
Okay. Ravi, did you want to say anything on that?
No, not really. I think it is, in a way, it's very easy it's easy to say that the right thing to do is to read the full paper, but I think what Eucharia has just mentioned is.
Sorry, I think we lost you there for a second, Ravi.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Now I mentioned that, that it's, of course, the best thing to do is to always read the paper before you cite it, but I think in some cases it could be very hard, and what Eucharia has just mentioned is a sensible approach.
Cool. Okay, so let's move on to a slightly different question. This is quite often asked. How many papers should I read for my literature review?
No hard and fast rule there, unfortunately. But I think, I would go, for a minimum of 40, 40 papers, 30 to 40 papers. But of course, you see, there is one thing, when we say reading, there is something very important about reading academic papers. Many of us, we make the mistake, of reading through a paper completely, even the parts that we cannot understand. When in fact, what we need is to extract something from that paper. Well, I've written a manual, on how to read academic papers, and my advice to my student is, well, if you see, if we look at the literature review part of a paper, for example, this is not going to be very helpful unless we're going to use cited in. What we should be doing when we read the literature review paper is to learn how the authors have put in their literature review themselves, how they have cited, how they have developed from one theme to another. This is what we mean by number of papers that we have to read. But fortunately, most of us, we will look at a little bit the methodology so as to include in our own literature review, because this is part of literature review. What methodology was used, what could have been the shortcomings of the methodology. It helps in the literature review. And finally, the discussion section, implication discussions. This is to be incorporated in our own, implications discussion section to cross-reference with other studies in the area. So here, number doesn't play a major role, but it is important. So my advice is not to read a full paper. Use what part is more important for your own paper, so that you can focus on your own paper. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree with Mehraz that we don't really have to pen down a number of papers to be read. Because for me, what is important is that you have a lot of information. Because just like the course material from AuthorAID says that we go with a funnel approach, we begin with the funnel in the upright position and we end with the funnel in the other way around. So we need to be sure, because you can read 49 articles, I read 20, I may have more information than you. Maybe you went to the wrong papers or to the wrong encyclopedias or whatever source of information you have consulted. So what is important, you can read as many as 100. It depends on what information that you're looking for. Have you got enough to be able to filter through and go down and go up again? So it's really important when we're searching for information that we really need to start with a lot and build the background for our audience, even for ourselves. For me, when you have written a good introduction, it makes you happy because you can understand the concept yourself. Because if you can't talk to yourself as a communicator, if I can't talk to myself, I believe I can't even talk to another person. Although you may not be the very best judge for yourself, but you need to try to see that you communicate after writing. So you need a lot of information, as many as you can lay your hands on, but making sure that you stay focused within the scope of the paper, because sometimes we tend to leave the scope and confuse the audience. They leave our scope and go somewhere else. Then coming back becomes difficult. So in that way, we risk getting our papers rejected or something. So we have to stay on focus, making sure even as we have very interesting materials, are they supporting the argument? Are they helping you to answer the question that you set about to answer? So those are important considerations to make.
Yeah, I see your point, and I agree that I think we may be confusing how many papers should I read, and the answer is however many you want, to how many papers I should cite. And then, as you said, you should stay focused on what your research question is, and that the papers in the introduction deal specifically with that research question, but also you need to make sure that you're using relevant, recent references, and in some cases, classic reference will also need to be used.
Any other comments, or should we move on to another question?
No, we can move on, I think, yeah.
Next question. Is it important to publish in a journal with an impact factor or with a high impact factor?
Well, no, I would not give, well, you know, the impact factor is something relative, and I would not bank, you know, too much on impact factor. This is, you know, the rule of the thumb for me.
Okay, for me, it is important, of course, to publish in a journal which has an impact factor. But is it the mass? I am not sure. For young researchers, I don't think that should be their goal. Because when you are new in the field of research, your main goal should be to try to publish in a reputable journal. Because we know there are a lot of politics now with the issue of impact factor. But as you move through your career, at some point, that should be your goal. Publish in journal with impact factor. Because at the end of the day, when you are a senior researcher, people are going to ask, okay, give me, if you want to apply for a position, they say, okay, send me the list of your publication. Of course, the person of the institution that you're going to hire you will consider your credential better if a good number of your papers have been published in journal with impact factor. But at the beginning of your career, I don't think that should be your aim.
If I may add, you see, I go by, for example, the AACSB, you know, they have a list of journals that are accepted. And this at the same time, you know, well, if we go by that list, for example, we are in the accreditation renewal process right now. So when I'm going to publish, I make sure that the journal is listed. So I am not worried about, you know, predatory journals and all that. And like you have rightly said, Blami, it gives better recognition, better acceptance. And these journals, you know, the listed journals, they have been listed, but the impact factor doesn't play a major role there. At least this is to my understanding.
This is an interesting issue because yes, your university will ask you to publish in a certain journal that has certain specifications. On the other hand, the impact factor is flawed, but it's the only measure we have so far. There are others, but they're not as well known. So, I mean, it is proprietary by Thomson Reuters, and journals have to pay to be on it. Unfortunately, again, it's the only one we have, and it's a very good measure, or it was a very good measure of the circulation of a journal, but it was more relevant when journals were printed and mailed to subscribers. Now that we're dealing with an online environment, you need to check that the journal that you're publishing in is well indexed, that is indexed in as many aggregators as you can find so that it can be viewed by as many people as possible. And again, I make a point to go open access because that will increase the number of people that can access your paper.
Yeah, I also agree that impact factor is important, but shouldn't be the ultimate, because we're trying to make it balanced. In everything we do as scientists, we try to strike a balance. We're trying to get to our readership. We're trying to also make sure that the science we do, or whatever field that we are practicing, we try to make sure that somehow we contribute to the societal growth. So it shouldn't be just what I am graded with. What is the assessment I have in my university where I'm a faculty? How many people have patronized my technology? If I am industry oriented, how many industries have bought into my idea? How many colleagues? All of these questions need to be addressed. So if I have a research that is targeting regional issues or national issues, so how do I go to high impact factor journal, maybe that is global in nature? I miss my audience that would have used whatever product I have to make more impact to the society or to the locality. So it's important that I ask the question of who are my target audience and what do I set out to achieve with the product of the research. So that should also inform me. If I don't have a regional journal that has impact factor, but they are good by description of the constitution of the editors and all of those, that makes a good journal, I should be able to send to such journals and make sure that my research gets to my target.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Ravi?
Ravi?
Yeah, well, again, I think the different responses we've got is reflect the nature of this issue. In a sense, the impact factor is an important measure, but it's not the only way to identify a suitable target journal. And at this point, I'd like to bring up something which is also related to the matter of predatory journals, or really on a bigger it's really about how to target a suitable journal, which is this new campaign called Think, Check, Submit. The website is thinkchecksubmit.org. So it's a website, and so it helps researchers think about a suitable journal to submit their work to, and stay away from predatory journals. So I think it's a good sort of approach instead of being swayed by only the impact factor or being lured by predatory journals. I think it's important sometimes to find a sort of a middle path, a balanced approach. So yeah, Think, Check, Submit is I think a really useful resource.
Okay, thank you. So I think we're running out of time, but I'll see if I can put in one more question. How about this question? How can we ensure that we don't plagiarize others?
Practice.
Practice.
Yeah, you need to practice your paraphrasing.
Yes.
I think, okay,
yeah.
go ahead, Matt.
No, please, Blami, please.
No, I think the issue of plagiarism is, like I said, for predatory, it is about also educating researchers about it. It is important to raise this, because I am sure in a low resource setting, a lot of people are doing plagiarism without even realizing that they are doing plagiarism. So there is a need to have education about it. And the second thing is that we need to give free access tool to check for plagiarism. Because in many instances, people don't have access to those software that allow you to say, okay, you in your papers are at least 20% or 10% of plagiarism. Try to reward it and decrease that level. I think those are the two measures I think that should be in place. And as I said before, AuthorAID can really help in that regard.
You see, for me, the simplest, and I never stop, reminding, for example, my students, never ever copy more than a long sentence. You can be better writers. You are better writers yourself, so why copy others? So in other words, read what you have to read and then put that reading aside and write from your mind. It's difficult then under these circumstances to to be caught for plagiarism. If we are used to lifting a long paragraph, then we have to properly reference using the right punctuation, otherwise Turnitin or other plagiarism tool will will highlight. So the best is not to copy and paste a long paragraph, a long sentence. Simple for all of us. Learn it from from childhood. This is for the budding researcher. Never ever develop your own writing skills. That's why I said when we an academic paper helps a lot here. If you learn from them, if you try to see how the paper is formatted and how the authors develop their themes, their arguments, I think this will be good enough. That's my simple solution.
Yeah, also, if whatever information we want to lead from some people's work is really complete only when we have taken a whole of the paragraph or whatever. So we try to block quotes. So it's important. So if we block quote, that will help to run away from plagiarism. And if we should consider the real grave consequence of plagiarism guiding us, like loss of our career or loss of our degree, so we'll be able to take it very seriously, even citing ourselves. When we have published works in several places, sometimes we are the same writers. So maybe I have a pattern of writing, and whenever you ask me the same question, I use the same sentence. It happens. So sometimes you may not even have to lift your work. You just say it, and you have said it exactly the way you said it in the other work. So and you didn't cite yourself, so it constitutes plagiarism in that regard. So I also would recommend that we try to do proper referencing and using the correct style recommended, because when we don't, also maybe the work you're using is in APAS and maybe now you're looking at MLAs. So if you don't use the right referencing, somehow it gets into plagiarism. It's just a thin wall between them. And we should also try as much as possible to cite whatever source, outside quoting and block quoting, citing whenever we have done it. But Mehraz has said it, that we need to paraphrase. 2 words is enough from information that we need to refer to. How do you understand the information you want to communicate? Because I don't have to put it in the same way the person put it. What I understand that's important, that makes a link, a connection to my own research, is what I'm trying to project to the audience. So in that way, we run away a lot from plagiarism. I think that's my take on that.
I just need to say something. I forgot. Yes, you need to reference things, and yes, you need to make sure that you're using your own ideas or your own words. But you also need to be a little bit flexible. Turnitin is a little bit strict, and in science there are many phrases that are similar, and they're used in every paper, and sometimes there is just one way you can say things. So Turnitin, for example, will highlight the phrase, we vortexed the sample, or we mixed the solution. Well, that's the only way to say that, and that is not necessarily plagiarism. And just remember, as you said, to cite correctly and to use your own ideas. That's, I think, the most important point.
I add one more thing. If you're unsure, you can also check for plagiarism by yourself before submitting. There are some free stuff there, like the right check. You can use that to check yourself before sending it out if you're unsure. Yeah.
Yes, and some people say that that Google is probably the best free plagiarism checker. Just putting phrases into Google can be the best way of checking. Okay, Ravi, did you have anything else to say on plagiarism?
Well, again, as someone who is very close to the course material, I would like to point out a couple of excellent resources that we have in the course. Not that we have the resources, but they are external resources. One is a plagiarism test, or a series of tests, and even a certification test. It's on the Indiana University website, and the link is somewhere in the course material in the research ethics section. And it's a free resource, and I've seen some of the tests myself, and it's really at a very good level. It's not something very simplistic. It really helps you think deeply, and it points out when you've not paraphrased or summarized well enough. And the other one is a document which has 26 guidelines on avoiding plagiarism. It's that's also something that's linked in the course material in the writing ethically lesson, if I remember right. So yeah, I would urge course participants to really go through those as well. Yeah.
Okay, thanks very much. I think that's all we've got time for. But thank you very much, everyone, for joining. It's been really interesting to get participants from Africa, Asia, and Latin America, all at the same time, which is quite rare. So thank you for taking part, and thank you for watching.
Okay, thank you, Andy. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Bye, everyone.
Goodbye.